And we're back with another Lakers Fast Break podcast. Our NBA previews continue. It's a broader look at the Eastern Conference. It's Gerald Glassford. Thanks so much again for watching. Listen, truly appreciate you doing so. And of course, the obligatory YouTube mandate. Please like and subscribe to get the latest notifications on when we go live on the air, or get you an upload to, of course, our Lakers Fast Break podcast. Whether we do a live show, post games, what have you, we've got it all covered for you right here at the Lakers Fast Break. So, yes, I thought I would have a deeper dive discussion on the Eastern Conference. And who better to go ahead and talk about the Eastern Conference than a good man indeed? If you have seen his work over the years with Chat Sports on YouTube, I'll tell you what, you are a satisfied customer indeed. But if you haven't, you need to go ahead and head over to Chat Sports, where basically sports, it's all over there. You got to go ahead and talk about the NFL, of course, talk about basketball, and so much more. So many videos for you to watch there. So many great personalities, and I've got one of them here today, a guy who I mainly catch during the trade deadline while I'm running my trade deadline show and draft show. I check out his stuff as well. It is Nic Rohloff. And Nick, great to have you here. Saw your last video touching on the blockbuster trade candidates, and I cannot tell you enough what great work you're doing with Chat Sports.
Yeah, I greatly appreciate that. I'm grateful to be on here and to preview the Eastern Conference. It's going to be quite an interesting year in the East. I know the West is a little bit stronger, but the storylines in the East with the injured players, the rising young teams, it's certainly going to be a fascinating year as the season tips off in 14 days from now?
Yeah, from when we're talking, absolutely. So, okay, let's start off with this. Okay, I know you've heard it before since you cover mainly the Miami Heat and then the Miami Dolphins in the NFL. I'm so sorry about that, but right now, hey, at least the guys that are still alive from the undefeated team got to pop open the champagne for another year this past weekend. I'll just leave it at that. But with that, you do really get a good idea on the Eastern Conference, more than most people on that. I know that you get that people such as yourself that covers the NBA so widely hear all the time Leastern Conference, and you even said it yourself that the Western Conference is stronger. But when you hear that Leastern Conference, in your mind, what is really that gap between the two conferences? How close is it, or how far away is that gap between the two?
Well, I mean, right now, I mean, the gap is pretty large. Now, most of that, I think, in my opinion, is due to injuries. But I mean, the main difference between the two conference over the last, 5, 7 years more, as long as they've called it the Eastern Conference, is really just the depth to it. Like, I think the top of the East has been honestly just as good, if not better, than the top of the Western Conference. Like, I don't think we've seen one conference just continue to dominate the titles. Yeah, obviously the Warriors dynasty is going to help that, but it's really just the depth. Like you look across the league last season and like the 10, 11, 12 seeds in the Western Conference, like they could have very easily been 7, 8, 6 seeds in the East a year ago. Like, I mean, listen, I cover the Heat. I'm a Heat fan. We made the playoffs after being the 10th seed in the play-in. Like we had no business being a playoff team and would have even sniffed at even the plan if we were in the West. So it's really just the depth in the West in comparison to the East, and it's certainly even broadened this season when you look at in terms of contending for titles. Because I don't think anyone believes Milwaukee is a legit title contender. I know you can't throw Giannis out there and say, well, it's the top three player in the world. But I mean, that roster around him is as bad as it's been. Obviously, the injuries, the Tyrese Halliburton, Jason Tatum, severely weak in the East. But also, as we preview this conference today, it's going to help elevate some of these younger teams like in Orlando Magic, the Detroit Pistons, the Atlanta Hawks, who I'm really high on. So there's going to be a lot of opportunities for some teams in the East this year that have been very bad to maybe not make an impression in terms of contending in the East for a berth to the finals, but in terms of maybe making the play-in and having a more successful season in the record book, it's there for the East this year.
Absolutely. We must remember, though, that the Eastern Conference representative in the finals last season wasn't even the number one seed in that conference. Far from it. Yet they were only one game and some will say one injury away from winning the title last year over the heavily favored number one team in the Western Conference.
Yeah, I mean, you aren't wrong about that. The Pacers certainly surprised a lot of people. They just have that ability to switch. I don't know if it's their play style, the up tempo, fast offense, the ability to where any of those five starters were capable of giving you a 30 piece any single night, just made it more difficult to defend. They also had some dogs over there, man. They got off to a really slow start last season in Indiana. I think they were like borderline 500 if I'm remembering correctly until December, and then they flipped the switch mid-December and we're a top five team not just in the East but in the NBA. So the Pacers were certainly playing a much better brand of basketball towards the end of the year. I think a lot of us, myself included, counted them out a little bit and expected to see the normal Celtics run to the finals as they've been the top dog in the East over the past couple of years, but the injury to Tatum certainly didn't help that. But yeah, you have to give credit where credit's due to Indiana, man. They can play. They're deep. Now, it's unfortunate with that Halliburton injury. They're going to take a step back. You at least project that. But hey, it's the NBA. You never know. Maybe Nemhart's that next guy to step up and really cement himself as a top tier player in the NBA.
Once again, I'm on with Nic Rohloff. He is just doing a tremendous job at Chat Sports. Go ahead and like and subscribe on all the great stuff that they're doing covering the world of sports at Chat Sports right there on YouTube. Let me ask you this. When it starts off with the top of the Eastern Conference, you start off with basically two teams. The conversation, I'm based out of Vegas, so the conversation as far as the betting seems to go towards two teams, the Knicks and the Cleveland Cavaliers. And at one time at the beginning of the summer, I think a lot of people were just saying the Cleveland Cavaliers, if they stay healthy, they're the clear-cut favorite. Heading into the season, or as we get closer to the season, is that still the case, or does it look like that the Knicks, maybe with some added depth, maybe with a new style of offense, if they stick to it, although you and I know that it always looks great in September, October, November, then by December and January, a lot of these teams seem to revert back to their old ways. But if it stays with this different style of up-tempo offense, less reliance on Jalen Brunson, do the Knicks stand a chance of finding their way to the NBA Finals?
I mean, I haven't checked the odds in a little bit here, so I don't know what they are. I don't know if the Cavs are favorites right now. I don't know if the Knicks are favorites, but if I were making my own odds, I would certainly have the New York Knicks as the favorites out of the Eastern Conference. It pains me to say that, it really does, not to show my bias here, because I'm also from New York, so I have a ton of Knicks fans, so they're just chopping it up in my group chats every day about how this is finals or bust. They expect to be there, and rightfully so. I mean, they were very good last season, ultimately couldn't get it done. A lot of blame put on Thibodeau. Deserved, maybe. His this way of coaching, I think, has a way to fizzle out late in the playoffs due to his slow tempo, grind it out type of mentality. And you need to be able to win those games, but you also need to be able to win the up tempo offensive games, as you mentioned. And they're hoping to do that with Mike Brown. I mean, from top to bottom, that roster, I think it's the best. I mean, you got that starting group. I don't know how they'll ultimately start their lineup this season. It'll be fascinating to see what they do at the two guard. You have to imagine they're going to go with Cat, OG, McCall in that front court, Brunson in the back court. Do they go big and start Mitchell Robinson and play McCall at the two? Do they go with a Deuce McBride at the two? They added some nice depth pieces this offseason. They added Jurgen Gabaselli, someone from the Sixers. That will help with their bench issue they had a year ago. They certainly made a lot of upgrades. I would have them number one in the East. I don't think it's a crazy tier break, though. I'll be honest here, Gerald. Like, I think the Cavs and the Knicks are very close. I think health will determine a lot in terms of how we're talking about these two teams potentially matching up in the conference finals in next May and June. But a third team I'll throw out there that I really like, and maybe I'm a year early. It might take them another year, but I love the Orlando Magic this season. I know a lot of people do. They made the big swing this offseason, sending a boatload of picks to the Grizzlies to get Desmond Bane, but it's a move I think they had to make. Franz Wagner and Paolo Banchero are a terrific duo on the wing. They're versatile on ball, off ball, the way they can defend, can get their own shot from the perimeter and the inside. But the issue with those two is that they're not efficient from beyond the arc at this point. And they were the worst three-point shooting team in the East last season. They simply needed to improve in that regard. I thought in the draft they were going to target shooters. After going Tristan da Silva a year ago, they ultimately trade their top pick. They had multiple of them, but they traded to get that Desmond Bane. And I think that's a great decision. You get Jalen Suggs back, who's a great distributor, defends at a very high level. You have him and Bane in the backcourt. I think that's a great complementary 1-2 in terms of their offensive game. They improved their three-point shot. Maybe KCP. I know he's didn't work out for them in year one, but you hope to get that shooting with Desmond Bane. I think the Magic are really poised for a good season here. I would have them third in the East. Do they have enough to get past the Knicks or the Cavs? I don't know. Maybe a deadline deal could come to fruition, but I really like that acquisition in the offseason for Desmond Bane.
So with that, and as I did my Orlando Magic preview with Alfred Esmond, I pointed out that Desmond Bane should help a lot with the spacing part of it, but it is still one individual. Of course, he brings a lot as far as defense, what he can do as far as still handling the ball. He could do so many things for this team, but the efficiency factor for Wagner and Banchero and also Suggs to a lesser extent, that also is a key. Do you think they will find enough efficiency, because that has eluded them so far in the playoffs? I mean, they've been able to get by with their defensive length, their size, what they can throw out during the course of the regular season, but efficiency-wise, do you think they can find a better level of efficiency as they gain one more year of experience and actually have a real run in this year's playoffs or this season's playoffs?
Yeah, I mean, they're certainly going to need to. I do think they get better. I mean, we see these young teams who consistently make the playoffs year after year. Usually, the trends say they will get better from year on to year on, and you hope that Paulo, you hope that Franz would have learned from their mistakes. I wouldn't say mistakes, but their shortcomings, I think is the right way to say it. Now, to be fair, their first time making the playoffs, they played the Cavs, and the series went 7 a couple of years ago, and the Cavs were an excellent defensive team. We know what they can bring to the table defensively with Jared Allen, Evan Mobley inside, and that's just a tough matchup for the Magic anyway, because we know that Banchero and we know that Wagner, their strengths are getting downhill and putting pressure on the rim. Well, when you have Mobley and Allen sitting back there, it's a little bit more difficult to do that. Mobley, obviously, the defensive player of the year from a year ago. So that's just a tough matchup, but that's also the moral of the story here, too. I mean, if the Magic are going to take that next step forward, they're likely going to have to go through Cleveland, who project to be a top 2 team in the East this season. So you mentioned the efficiency. They're going to need to. I think they're first-round pick. They had 2 picks, as I mentioned just a second ago. Jace Richardson out of Michigan State. He is going to help bring a lot of nice things. Shot extremely well last season as a Spartan true freshman. He's a smaller guy, but he plays winning basketball. And anybody from Tom Izzo's tree there in Michigan State, I'm always a big fan of the program he's built. Love Michigan State. And Jace Richardson was someone who started on the bench, came in as a starter late in the year, and really transcended that Michigan offense. Great three-point shooter. That will help with the spacing and potentially efficiency to allow Banchero and Wagner to have that space to work, which is exactly why I think Desmond Bane was a massive addition as well. I think they certainly will improve from efficiency standpoint, but as I kind of alluded to a little bit ago, I'm just not sure this is the year for them to break through. I think they will be a top 4 team in the playoffs when it's all said and done next April in the Eastern Conference, but I have them as a second-round exit. I don't think they would be able to beat New York or Cleveland just yet if all the teams were fully healthy.
What about a team like Atlanta? A lot of people have started boarding that train for Atlanta in regards to all the great offseason. Very astute offseason moves for them. They had probably, of any team, one of the best, if not the best, offseason out there. Partially because they signed Porzingis, partially because they signed Nickeil Alexander-Walker, partly because New Orleans was very giving. And so with that, where do you see them? I don't know if they're ready yet as a collective to make that leap back into the upper tier of the Eastern Conference, but I know some people really are ready to go ahead and count them in the top four already.
Yeah, I honestly think I'm one of those people. Now, I might be getting ahead of myself here, but I loved their offseason. I did. I think they're just so deep, and you always have the question marks around a Trey Young led team. And I was actually having this debate with some people in our chat sports offices about, can a Trey Young led team really do it? Like, we know he made the Eastern Conference early in his career in that crazy run, but could he do it again with the way he plays ball? And I responded, I don't know if it's Trey Young's team anymore. And I know that's a crazy thing to say, but that's just how much I believe in this young forward they have, Jalen Johnson. He is absolutely phenomenal. The way that he can create his own shot, but also be a difference maker on the defensive end. It actually is very similar to Paolo Banchero. The size similarities are there. The way they can play on offense are. I think Jalen Johnson, it was unfortunate for them because they got him hurt halfway through the year. He missed the second half of the season and never really returned. And if they had him, I think they would have been a cemented playoff team. We know they lost to the Heat in that play-in game, which was for the 8 seed or miss of the playoffs. But I think with him, they would have easily made the postseason. I'm really high on Johnson. You mentioned some of those additions they had. Porzingis. I love Onyeka Okongwu. I've loved him for a long time. I'll never sell my stock on him. I think he's just a tremendous young big. But the versatile lineups they can throw out there are just unlimited. I mean, you can take Trey Young off the floor and have Okongwu, Porzingis, Johnson, Daniels, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, like Risa Shea. Like, I mean, they also bring in Luke Kennard as a shooter off of the bench. I have been in on the Hawks for a long time. You mentioned you're in Vegas in the betting lines. I haven't looked at the lines in the Eastern Conference in a long time, but just based off value, I put in a couple futures to win the Eastern Conference back in July. The two teams that I took because I thought they were just tremendous value were the Atlanta Hawks. I think it was plus 850 when I got them, and I knew the other one was plus 600. It was the Detroit Pistons. I mean, those two teams I think up and coming. Do they win the East? Probably not, but I think those two are really ascending to be in the top 3 or 4 of the Eastern Conference for years to come if everything goes the right way. And then you mentioned it as well. They set themselves up for great success with that trade with the Pelicans, getting the unprotected first rounder. New Orleans obviously moved up to grab Derek Queen there. If they're able to leverage that first round pick into a massive deadline acquisition, they could make an impact this year or just hold off and grab a stud in this upcoming draft, which, oh boy, this one projects to be a great one.
This is true indeed. And I follow your videos as we get closer and closer to, with the mock drafts and whatnot right there on Chat Sports Indeed. So definitely be interested come that time next year when we definitely take a look at who might be some of those studs that'll be coming out, and definitely looking forward to seeing that. Again, it would be the killer of all killers if Atlanta somehow manages to win the lottery with that pick. And I'll just say not a lot of happy people in New Orleans. But you mentioned the last team I want to cover as a possible favorite if things go well, if everything goes right. Because in my previews with the other teams and the other reporters covering these teams, the one question I gave is if everything goes right. So if everything goes right, there's probably only one other team that can be part of this conversation as far as the top of the Eastern Conference, and that is the Detroit Pistons. Cade Cunningham, if he has an MVP top 5 player like season, he just may be able to carry a pretty quality team. And, they've rounded with a lot of youth, athleticism, defense. It's just about the shooting, I think, when it comes to Detroit and how much they'll have of it. But they could certainly make their point in the Eastern Conference as early as this year, coming off their success and their feistiness against New York in last year's playoffs.
I mean, you could make the argument that Detroit should have won that series a year ago. I mean, if they didn't have the collapses that they had in the fourth quarter against the Knicks, we could be talking. I mean, listen, would they have blown it up completely in New York? Probably not. They probably would have just done exactly what they already did, which is find a new coach. and move on from there. But that Pistons team almost got a series win against the Knicks last year. Obviously, just didn't go their way. And I think that just comes with the maturity of making the playoffs. They didn't really have a lot of experience there. I think the most experienced playoff guy they had was Tobias Harris. And no offense to Tobias, but if that's your veteran in terms of leading a playoff team, that you got issues. But I really like that young squad. You mentioned the shooting. That was a major issue for them in that series against New York. They add Duncan Robinson. Yeah, they lose Malik Beasley. We'll see how that situation ultimately plays out. If he'll ever return to the NBA, who knows? But you can argue that Duncan Robinson is probably a better impactful player for them anyways. Beasley better defensively? Absolutely. But I don't think anyone is a better gravitational three-point shooter in the NBA than Duncan Robinson. Just being able to watch him throughout his ascension and his NBA career in Miami, just in his evolution. He's really improved off the ball and even on the ball, leveraging that shot into drives and floaters and playmaking for others. But Duncan's going to be impactful for them. You hope to get that jump up from Ausar Thompson. I mean, that's really the X factor here. You mentioned if everything goes right. And when you paint that picture for Detroit in terms of potentially becoming an NBA Finals caliber team, it all starts with Ausar because the kid is an unbelievable athlete, already a top half wing defender, if not top 10 wing defender in the NBA, but he just has no offensive game. I mean, he can run in transition and finish, but in the half court, he looks lost out there. And you can just play him basically in the corner defensively and say, yeah, you know what? We're not even going to guard him. If they throw it to him and he wants to shoot a three, we'll take the 20% chance that it goes in and the 80% chance he misses, and we'll run with it, especially in the playoffs. And it's not like you trust him that much to create off the dribble in the half court either. So it's really just dependent on his growth because I love their big men duo, Isaiah Stewart and Jalen Duren. They're awesome. They rebound. They're hard nosed. Some people call them fake tough guys. I mean, they look pretty tough to me. I wouldn't want to get in a fight.
I'm not going to test them.
Yeah, I'm not. So to me, it just all starts with their young player development. If Ausar Thompson's able to take that step forward, boy, are they going to be good. But if they stay healthy, even with their current roster, and you get the same level of play from Ausar Thompson a year ago this season, which I don't really believe that will be the case. I think he will at least improve in some regard. That's without a question a top 6 team in the Eastern Conference. And I mean, we saw it last season. Tatum gets hurt in the playoffs. I know it was in the finals, in the final game of the year, but Halliburton gets hurt. So you get yourselves in the dance and anything can happen. And I do put themselves in that caliber of teams to where, like, if everybody stays fully healthy, it's probably not their year. One thing goes the right way in the playoffs, and it could be a way they make a run.
So with that, I know you had mentioned that your pick for the Eastern Conference, I'm assuming to go to the finals, begrudgingly, I think was the Knicks, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's what it would be.
So with that, I'll ask you the other question before I get to the Lakers, and we go ahead and make sure what I do is called the cheap plug, where you can pitch anything you want as far as what you're doing as well. I want to go ahead and ask, is there any surprise teams of the East? Is there any other teams in the land of mediocrity, or the teams that have an injured player it might be interesting towards the latter part of the season? Or is there any teams to look out for outside of the ones we mentioned in the Eastern Conference?
If you're asking in terms of winning the East, I really think the 5, 6 that we touched on, Atlanta, Orlando, Cleveland, New York, and Detroit are probably the 5 that I would have to say. Like, maybe Tatum returns, maybe. If that happens, they are obviously going to have a shot. And I won't throw this team out there in terms of winning the East, but I want the people watching, and maybe I'm on an island here. I'll be on an island. I'm buying all the stock I can in the Charlotte Hornets. I love this young team. LaMelo Ball, there's a lot of questions, but I could not be more on Brandon Miller. I've been a fan of his for a very long time. I've had some very hot takes on him coming out of the draft in terms of how much I loved him. They draft Con Kneppel. They draft Ryan Kalkbrenner. They drafted guys this year that will raise their floor. I think Brandon Miller is a budding star. I think he has a chance to make the All-Star team this year. He looked very good in his second season a year ago, ultimately battled injuries, which kept him in and out of the lineup. I'm not going to claim they're going to make the playoffs, but hey, listen, if LaMelo stays healthy, which is probably not going to happen because he somehow played in less games than Zion Williamson over the last 4 years. I can't believe that stat, but it's true. And I think that's a team that could sneak into the 10 seed, if I'm going to be honest. I really like the Hornets, and I like what they're building in Charlotte. It's all about if they can stay healthy, and they're just raising the floor. And I love what they did in the offseason this year.
So before we head on out, and again, I truly appreciate your kindness and taking time to speak with me. It is Nic Rohloff from Chat Sports. And before we head on out, I do ask every one of my guests to evaluate the Lakers, since this is a Lakers-centric show and a Lakers-centric channel. Your thoughts on the Lakers and what kind of damage they can do this season?
Yeah, I mean, listen, this is a team that will absolutely be threatening in the Western Conference. The question is DeAndre Ayton that guy? I mean, that's really where it boils down to for me, because we've seen Luka Doncic in his career that he is the most successful with a rim running athletic big. Is DeAndre Ayton going to be able to provide that for the Lakers? But I mean, the backcourt of Reeves and Luka could be very, very fun. I know we talked a little bit about, and I said it in a video on Chat Sports about Reeves and his long-term future in Los Angeles. But if you're just currently evaluating them in terms of what they have, and if they have it the entire year, that's an awesome backcourt. LeBron, maybe in his last dance, he absolutely can still play. It's just, I think they can be dangerous, but I don't know if they're going to be able to get over the hump. And I hate to say that for Lakers. I don't know how you feel. I don't know how the Lakers fans feel, but I just feel like they're missing a piece on the wing. And that is why you saw a lot of rumors this offseason with my Heat about a potential Andrew Wiggins trade. I thought that would have been a terrific trade for them to give them that defensive but also floor spacing wing for that roster. But that's a team, if they need some of those depth pieces to come through, though. Are you going to get Jared Vanderbilt on the floor this season? Are you going to see Gabe Vincent provide some things? Is Dome Connect going to be able to be a rotational guy? Because he looked really rough in the summer league, and I know he got off to a hot start last year, but faded down the stretch of the season. They're another team we talked about. If everything goes right for the Lakers, they'll be a top 3, top 4 team in the West, contending for it all. Do they have enough to get over the hump against a team like the Thunder, who are looking to rebound and repeat as champions? I don't know. I really like the Rockets this year with the addition of KD. Van Fleet's a big loss, but that's a good young team over there. So the Lakers are definitely in the mix. I really like what they have, but I just think they need something else to get them over that hump.
So before we head on out, that's a very astute assessment, by the way. That's something similar to what many of the people I've interviewed, and doesn't stray too far away from what I think myself. When I get out of the Lakers bubble and I actually see the team for what it is, it definitely is a team that, if everything goes right, can make some noise. Luke can take you a long way if he's playing at MVP level, but there are certain things that this team needs to address before it can actually make a playoff run that I think is going to be substantial, but we'll have to wait and see. As your shows, as your channels, as your latest video at the time of this recording will tell you. Absolutely. But before we head on out, it is the cheap plug time. So, Nick, you're never bashful or shy on your channel, so I will let you go ahead and take over and let everybody know where you're at and why they need to check out all your great stuff on the world of sports.
Yeah, I'll keep it nice and brief, so appreciate it. Follow me at Twitter at Nic_Rohloff. I cover the NFL and NBA, and I love college basketball as well. It's actually my favorite sport. Fun fact, I just love college basketball the most out of any sport. So if you like that content, I'll be tweeting about that all the time. Cover the Dolphins and Heat. Those are the teams I'm a fan of. Not from Miami. Don't know how I'm a fan of both, but love them to death. And at YouTube, it's the Heat Report by Chat Sports. It's Dolphins Today by Chat Sports. And then I have, how you've seen me, just on our standard main Chat Sports channel, where I cover the NBA on a weekly basis. Ramps up around the trade deadline. I do a ton of NBA draft content. That's a big passion of mine as well. So if you're looking for passionate sports coverage, that's how I'll say it. Passionate, informative, and hopefully entertaining.
Absolutely, indeed. And if you go ahead, again, you won't regret you stopping by Chat Sports to check out Nick and the entire crew covering all the different vast facets of the NHL, NBA, NFL, the whole gambit of sports. But again, his great videos that he's got as far as covering the Heat and the Miami Dolphins. Again, we'll see what happens if your Dolphins can regain some momentum. Hopefully they can. It's been a tough road so far, but here in Vegas, we can't really brag anymore either. So the Pete Carroll era has not started on a good note as well. So
yeah, listen, it's rough for both of us.
It is indeed. It is indeed. But the NBA season does get underway in the not too distant future. And Nick, I am just wishing you continued success. I hope if you do have the time at maybe a certain point in the season, we can revisit this conversation, because I would definitely welcome that opportunity.
Oh yeah, I would love to do that. Appreciate the opportunity to come on here. It was an absolute blast chopping it up, and continued success for you as well. Appreciate you inviting me on.
Thank you again. Once again, it is Nic Rohloff. Please go ahead and check out his thoughts on the Miami Heat, the Miami Dolphins, and the NBA, and also college basketball as well, right there for you at Chat Sports. Just type in Chat Sports on the YouTube search bar. Boom! It hits you right there, right in front of your face. There's no way you can't avoid it. It's all over there. They've got a ton of videos you need to check out, and it all starts with the great work that Nick's doing at Chat Sports. Nic, great to have you here. I look forward to talking to you again about basketball, the Eastern Conference, the Miami Heat, the Lakers, whatever you want to talk about when you stop back in right here at the Lakers Fast Break Podcast.